Good morning and welcome to Rose Red Homestead. We're so glad that you could join us today. As you all know, we focus on self-reliance, food security, and emergency preparedness. One of the things that I am going to want for sure in our food storage throughout an entire year, if necessary, if we have to live off of our food storage for that long, is butter. But not butter. I'm talking about ghee. Ghee, G-H-E-E, is butter that has had the milk solids removed. And we have done a previous video on ghee. We did it about 2 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. And it still stands. It's still in our collection of videos. But I'm going to update with a little bit more complete information based on a lot of the questions that we had on this video. It's been a very, very popular video. Now, we are doing this for two reasons. First of all, we are updating just a little bit about the information, and I'm doing it right here on the bar with better lighting. I'm going to go into a little bit better detail. And also, we are trying out a new overhead camera setup. One of the things that I've been concerned about with Jim is that when he wants to get a down shot or a shot from up high, he has been climbing a ladder. Now, it panics our children when either one of us climb a ladder. So we don't tell them when Jim goes up on the roof with a ladder. But when you are up on a ladder and trying to video at the same time, it is just asking for an accident. So we have just purchased a new setup, and Jim will show that to you in just a minute when we get it all set up. And so we are going to be going back and forth between this regular setup and an overhead setup that will look right down into this pan. And I am hoping that it gives you all a much better view of exactly what's happening in the pan. So I want to show you what the equipment is that we'll be using. First of all, I am going to be doing 3 pounds of butter. Now, I just went out to the freezer and grabbed this package of butter, and it is salted butter. You can also use unsalted butter, and many times I have used a mixture of both in the same batch. Some people are purists about how they like their ghee. Frankly, it doesn't make any difference to me, but you can do it any way you want to. We're going to be using 3 pounds, and 3 pounds of butter makes 6 8-ounce jars, close to 8-ounce jars of ghee. And that ghee looks just like this. Looks like butter, doesn't it? Well, that's because it looks like butter, it tastes like butter, I use it like butter, but it has no milk solids. This ghee was processed in February of 2022. That's February of this year. February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, which means it's 8 months old. For 8 months, this has been out in our food storage. It has been through the heat of the summer. It's been through cooling weather, even freezing weather, although our food storage area does not freeze. We have a little space heater out there, so it doesn't ever get freezing. The great thing about ghee is that it needs no refrigeration. It can be at room temperature in your cabinet out in our food storage, and it lasts for a long time. There is no danger of botulism from ghee because once the milk solids are removed, it is 100% fat. Botulism can't grow, other organisms don't grow in fat, and so this is a very safe way to process. Now, I'll be talking about some other things as we go, but here is the equipment. I have a strainer. In this strainer, I'm going to be putting 3 layers of cheesecloth, but I won't do that just yet. I have a container that I'm going to move the ghee from this pot through a strainer into this glass container to trap out any of the milk solids that may not have stuck to the bottom of the pan. Our goal is to get them to stick to the bottom of the pan. And then from this little container, I'm going to be pouring into these jars. The reason that they are on this baking sheet is that I'm going to put this in the oven at 200 degrees for the duration that it takes me to do this, for about 20 minutes. This is the only time that I ever put canning jars in the oven to sanitize them. The reason being, I just barely washed these. You may see some water dripping. These jars need to be completely dry. I don't want any water in these jars. And so I'm putting them in that oven to dry them out and to sanitize them. I am not canning ghee. Just because it looks like canning, just because these jars are sealed, these have not been canned. They have never been immersed in water or processed in either a pressure pot or a water bath canning. No need to do that. This is called open kettle canning, and I will explain that. And I don't use open kettle for anything else, only for ghee. So I'm going to get these started in the oven. We will get the other overhead camera set up and we will get going in just a minute. So Jim is showing the shot of our overhead camera. This is the first time that we're using it. So I just wanted you to see what's actually going on behind the scenes there for a minute. So we're going to shut that regular camera off, and I'm going to be only be heard and seen through the overhead camera for the next little while. So right now I am unpackaging the butter and dropping it in the pan. This is the first time that I have done ghee in this pot over a butane, our little butane stove. And so, in a way, it's like I'm doing this again for the very first time. I don't want this butter to burn, of course. I just want it to boil. And it gets real splattery. So I'm hoping we don't splatter any on our little GoPro camera. All right, it's going to take a little while for this butter to melt. So we will be back when it is all melted. So it is starting to boil. The butter looks like all of it is melted, so that's good. The whitish that you are seeing is part of the milk solids and the foam created by the milk solids. All of that is going to go away as we proceed. Some people remove the foam. I don't bother because it gets to the bottom anyway. So if you take a good look at the yellowish part, you can see the milk solids. I don't know if you will be able to see with this much foam on the top. But as I stir, you can see little dots of milk solids suspended in the fat. All right, so you really don't need to stir, so I'm not going to. I hope I can get good heat control with this pan. Here's our first boil. It's lively, it's noisy, we're going to watch and try to identify the different stages of the boiling to help you understand. Now, again, this is the first time I'm doing it with this burner and with this pan. So it's already looking different to me, which is probably a good thing because it may look like this for some of you as well. This foam is much more foamy than what I'm used to dealing with. I can barely get down to the butter. So I'm going to leave it, just let it boil for a few minutes. What we are going to be looking for is the whitish, all of the milk solids to sink down to the bottom of the pan and to then form a little crust on the bottom of the pan and brown. And that is how we will know that the milk solids are gone and that we do have ghee. Now already it's changing, the boiling is changing a little bit. This might be moving faster than when I'm on the stove. Some people think that clarified butter and ghee are the very same thing. With ghee, you want to go beyond clarified butter and make sure that that crust is browned on the bottom, not burned. You don't want to turn the ghee brown, although I have done that one time out of the many batches. Okay, so now we are starting to see what looks familiar to me. The bubbles are now much tinier. Sound is different. The foam is disappearing. We want the yellow part, which is the fat, to look very clear. It still is cloudy because of the milk solids present. Don't walk away from a pan of ghee when it's going. I've learned that. Okay, notice this series of bubbles here, little tiny fine bubbles all over the top. That's a clue that we're getting close. Now, take a look at the ghee itself, especially out here at the edges where the spoon is, if I can get enough out of the way. Do you see how we still have plenty of the milk solids that are there? Let's check the bottom, see if they're browning yet.
You can't see anything, then go the other direction. There we go, that's it.
So we're close to the clarified butter stage, but we're not to the ghee stage yet. Okay, this is very foamy. I have not ever had this before. I'm taking it off. Yeah, the milk solids are plenty brown. Turning this off and getting it out of the way. Jim is up on his ladder. It's 3 layers of cheesecloth. All right, I'm just going to pour and we'll take a look at the bottom. You see the bottom?
Yeah.
So, yes, so that's all nice and browned. We almost overcooked it. So there's the bottom. So that is probably a little bit on the overdone side, but the color of the ghee is just fine. Sometimes I forget that this stuff has just come out of the oven and is hot. I have been known to reach the handle for this particular container without a hot pad, and that's not good. Okay, so we're now going to pour directly into the jars. No need to worry about headspace. I am leaving a little bit of headspace, but you don't have to, because we're not going to process these. I'm just trying to get the amount in the jars fairly equal. This one's going to be a little bit low, which is fine. Okay, as quickly as possible, I want to wipe the rims with this vinegar on a paper towel. The vinegar will cut the oil in case any got on the rims. I want a good vacuum seal on these. Again, this is not canning. The lids are washed and completely dry. With the jars hot and the ghee hot, once we put the lids on, and the rings, then we should hear some popping. So I usually do not get a partial jar like this one is, but I think with this pan I got more of the milk solids on the bottom, and they were in higher mounds. I haven't had that before. So it was good for me to cook this in a different pan so I can get a little bit of a different perspective. We'll come back in just a little while and we will take a look at these and see how many have sealed. I really am not all that concerned if they don't seal, because they don't have to seal. It's nice if they do. If they don't seal, I will put them to the front and use them first, or even leave them in the house. But even that is not necessary. So, all right, we'll be back soon. We are finished with this batch. They have all sealed. which is really good. I'm probably this little one going to keep it in the house just because I always need ghee and I'll just use it. Now here is a trick that I use. If these jars of ghee don't seal in the first 10 or 15 minutes, I just stick them in the fridge. There needs to be a temperature differential. They still need to be warm, almost hot, for that to work, and then you put them in the cold fridge and it shrinks down as the fat cools, then it's going to pull that lid down. And so sometimes you just need to give it a little bit of help. Now, if these don't seal, once again, the ghee is still shelf stable for a long, long, long time. So you can just move it to the front of your supply and use it fairly quickly. But anyway, these are lovely. And in fact, I'm gearing up to spend an entire day. You see, I'm set up here for my very next batch, and I'm going to start on that right now. We are way low on ghee, and so I'll be doing ghee for a lot of today. So thank you for being with us, and I hope this overhead camera shot will help more of you to be able to really see and follow the process as the ghee moves from a solid into a liquid, then starts boiling, and it goes through several boiling stages, and the milk solids get, they sink to the bottom and get all browned, kind of a brownish crust, and then you pour that off and it is ghee. In fact, a lot of people get it a lot browner than we did because it gives the ghee kind of a nutty flavor. But I like the flavor that is produced by how we do it. It tastes just almost identical to butter. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you at our next video.